Welcome folks, it's Crafty Carol here with week 1 of my 12 weeks of Christmas. Now we all make Christmas cards and I have to make an awful lot as well as run my classes and obviously. So I always want things that are really quick to do. So in the mini catalogue from July to December I saw this stamp, the Snow Crystal. It's a giant size stamp. It fits on the very biggest of our blocks. Ooh, let me just show you, which is this one. Mine are filthy, just ignore that. It fits on the very, very biggest of our blocks. And it's quite difficult to use big stamps and get them inking properly without getting ink where you don't want it or whatever. So I thought I bought it because I thought, oh, do you know what? That would look lovely just embossed. So that's what I've done on this card that I'm going to show you today. So hopefully you can see from the light that it's all shiny from the embossing. So I've done that, and then I've simply stamped a sentiment and put it across the middle, and obviously done the inside as well. But I did this with the Stamparatus, and I wanted to show you the Stamparatus because it is the most wonderful tool. And it's so useful, particularly for these big stamps like the Snow Crystal. So it comes with 2 plates, and you can put your stamp on the plate, and then you fold it over to press down on this piece, which is where you put your card to stamp onto. So it's really easy to use, and you can get all sorts of different things from it. I'm going to do a whole series on Stamparatus at some point in the future. So what I've done to start off with is I just inked the corners of the stamp so that I know exactly where it's going to stamp on this sheet. So that gives me a guide as to where I want to put my card, because I want this on the front of my card near the top. So that's the front of my card pointing that way. I want it to sort of sit there so I can put it on the top, because I think this time I'm going to put that sentiment near the bottom. So first thing, whenever you are embossing, make sure that you fully cover the area you're going to be embossing with an embossing buddy. So I'm just going to do that. We'll just cover that. Make sure that my card is completely covered in this, and that just stops the embossing powder going where you don't want it to go, which is a really important part of embossing. You've seen me do this before. So I want this stamp to be at the top here of my card and these at the side. So I can now use my graph paper here. You can see the stamp doesn't actually stamp quite straight, even though I put it on so that the backing of the stamp is straight. So I obviously didn't quite get the backing on straight around the stamp, but it doesn't matter, because if I do this, I know exactly where it's going to stamp to be straight. So I'll need to put my card on not quite straight. So I need this near the top, so I'm just going to bring it slightly further down than the top, slide it across so that it's there. I can check this side that I'm covering, make sure it's covered, so I know it's going to stamp onto the card, and then I can use the magnets just to hold this down while we stamp. So I've prepared my card base, I've put it where I want it to be, I've got my stamp ready. So now all I need to do is Versamark up my stamp. So I'm going to use embossing, so we have to use the Versamark ink pad for that. So I'm going to make sure my stamp is fully covered, and I can just check it in the light to make sure I've got some everywhere, which I have. So then I can simply bring it across. Oh, it's going to be in the way, there we go. Bring it across and stamp. Make sure I've pressed it down fully everywhere. There we go, because it's a big stamp. Now obviously you can't see anything because it's clear embossed ink, but I can see that it has covered that. So I'll just move this out of the way. There we go. Now I'll bring in my embossing powder. I'm using silver embossing powder. I put mine in these Chinese containers, Chinese meal containers, because I'm a messy crafter, and it means I don't spread it quite so much. So I can put the card more or less into the container, so I'm not going to spill embossing powder everywhere. I still manage to get it most places, to be honest. So I can cover it in embossing powder and then flick to make sure all the excess is off. And there, hopefully you can see my image covered in the embossing powder. So I'm going to, because it's very noisy to do this on camera, I'm going to go away and just do this for a minute. I'll come back when I've finished doing the heat embossing, and I love this bit. This is my favourite bit of embossing, when you put the heat on top, and what happens? Brilliantly, you get this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful change, and the shimmer starts. So let me just go and do that. And just so you can see what I mean, that's half of it done, so you can see how it changes. I just love it. It's magic. Okay, so there is my image. You can see that now, hopefully, nice and shiny. So on this one, I actually had it in the centre, and I put my sentiment across the middle. I've used the sentiments from this set, the Mistletoe Magic set. So I've used the Merry Christmas for the front, and I used Christmas blessings for you and yours inside, plus some snowflake stamps from a different set. You could use the corner of the big stamp just to stamp inside if you wanted, and to stamp your envelope. Do not forget to stamp your envelopes, folks. So let's have a look at this sentiment, because when I first stamped it, there's a lot of white around it. So on this one, I trimmed it and just cut round the Y so I could take a bit more white off the bottom. I'm going to do it slightly differently this time. So I have already stamped the inside in exactly the same way, so I'll stick that in a minute. Here is my Merry Christmas stamp, and except I've lost my where have I put my ink pad? Oh, it's over there under my Versamark, should have known. So this is Night of Navy to match my card base. So I'm just going to stamp this, again, make sure I've covered the stamp it in the middle. There we go. And what I'm going to do this time is actually do it slightly differently than before. I'm just going to clean my stamp. I always like to clean my stamps just after I've used them, because otherwise they can stain, and it's always better for the stamp to clean it properly. So what I'm going to do with this is, if I can find my snips, is I'm actually going to cut closer to the letters. So I'm going to cut round here like before. So I'm going to just curve around my Y. Curve around this way as well. I could do this on the trimmer, but I'm just going to do it by eye. So that's done the bottom, and I've actually, on this one, I'm going to do a similar thing on the top. So I'm going to cut across here. You can cut it all the way around it, but I actually want it to go a lot of the way across the card. And then I'm just going to, just by hand, I need to get that so it's roughly the same as the other end. So it's about there. So I'll just cut across there. There we go. So I think that just looks better. I think this particular sentiment is just a bit big to have on a black card like that. So I can stick that across here. I could do something with the ends, or I can just, I think I'll just stick it like that actually. So let me just get a little bit of this. I'm going to use some strips of this to stick on the back. I always use every little bit of my dimensionals card. So stick that on the back there. And that one on there. Just peel off the backing. There we go. And I think we'll have this across the bottom of the card. I can just sit there. There we go. So that's the front of my card, and I'm just going to stick this inside. And that is how quickly you can make them. So you can mass produce things with the Stamparatus, which is one of the reasons I really like it. So I could do several of these all at once and have perhaps a whole set of, I don't know, 4 or 6 cards. Yes, they're the same, but it doesn't matter so much for Christmas, ready to go. So there we go. There is my card all ready. Just got the envelope to bring in now to show you. That is my first idea for my first Christmas card. So if we just bring in the card, this is the card I've now just done. So I made the other one there, and there I did something slightly different with the sentiment. On this one, I did yet another version of the sentiment. So this time I've actually put the snowflake down at the bottom of the card, and I've versamarked the sentiment at the top and embossed that as well. So 3 different ideas, same card, easy to put together. You could mass produce several of these. So these are all slightly different. They're not all the same, but you can use it's using the same technique with the Stamparatus. So if you'd like to see more ideas, please join me again next week for week 2 of my Christmas series this year, and go to my website craftycarolscards.co.uk to find out more, and please subscribe to the channel, and then you'll not miss me in the future. See you again soon. Bye for now.